Alistair Crook, your whole mission in life has been to bring people together. You've done the impossible at times between Palestine and Israel. It is, alas, not in great shape now, but you've been an advisor to Xavier Solana, who's the EU man on this point duty. Here, looking into Iraq, do you see enough from the surge to provide the ground for sort of political and economic development?
First of all, I don't think that you can take the surge to be necessarily a success, sadly. In fact, potentially, it may make things very much worse. Because what has been happening in this period is been going into a new phase where the United States has been arming Sunni groups to form militias. Well, these people are taking the weapons not so much to fight Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda have always been a small group, but because they want a seat at the table of power. The risk is, if they don't get it in the next short period, then they may fight their way to the seat of power. So in fact, arming them may actually entrench a more deep and more bitter struggle to come in the months ahead. So it's not clear which way this thing will go in that sense.
Very interesting. I mean, yes, come in.
What we are going for, usually using the military action and the army to solve the problem. It is a procedure. We have to go for the cause. If we can really do something like the national reconciliation in Iraq, this is the first right step. So if we think about it, an international conference under the patronage of the United Nations, the European Union, the Islamic and Arab League, this national, what you call it,
an international conference, Alistair Cook?
With one condition. The key thing is that the West, principally the United States, has got to drop its polarizing language towards the Arab nations and states and Muslim states. You can't both try and bring people in to help and at the same time demonize those that you're wanting to help you.
Because the changes in Iraq, the invasion, is not, I mean, the changes is not brought by the Iraqi people, by themselves, in order to change the situation by themselves. We need the help of the international bodies, and this should supervise such a national reconciliation program. Out of this national reconciliation, if we solve the problem really between the political parties without any red lines upon any people, any parties, then we will reach the national unity government. Then we will go to the economic development of Iraq in order to absorb the unemployment. This is the first step in the...
Asma al-Haddari.
John, I want to say something. They all talk about national reconciliation. Lovely. But they forget one very important element, and that is the Iraqi resistance. Please, let's step away from what is being said about insurgency and Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda practically don't exist in Iraq. They were brought in by the Americans. We don't want to deal with the past. But there is the resistance, and the resistance has to be spoken to and be accepted.
Right, well, that's where, again, I have to come back to you, because you talk to resistances and unspeakable people that can't be negotiated with. Could you negotiate with the Iraqi resistance? Is it a coherent enough form to negotiate with?
It's very divided. There are many elements to it. But that is part of the patient work of trying to talk to people. But again, I go back and I agree with what the speaker was saying earlier. You do need to talk to to the neighboring states as well, but not on the basis of preconditions and other baggage of other agendas.
But small though it is, could you actually talk to Al-Qaeda? I mean, who've slaughtered their way through Iraq?
Look, I don't think that is not part of it. Al-Qaeda is, of course it's there, but it's a very small element in the overall equation. The resistance is essentially a Sunni and an Iraqi resistance. So you don't have to do that. It will be the resistance who will talk to Al-Qaeda.
Dr. Chalabi, very briefly.
Very briefly, I can't let go of the comments made by Charles Rees because I think he's twisted the facts. He talked about previous decades of instability in Iraq and destruction. He forgot about the destruction that has been brought about by the invasion, 5 years of complete destruction, waste of the revenue that is being generated, American money as well as
But in a sense,
Iraqi
this is in the past, and we've somehow got to push forward. I mean, we've got to recognise there have been wasted opportunities.
It's nothing. What has improved? Water, electricity, oil products, education, health, everything has gone
Well,
down.
I'm going to come to that in very much the next part of the programme, because after the break, from the security issue, we're going to move to oil and the whole issue of security of infrastructure that we've just been talking about there. Iraq sitting above the third largest deposits in the world. And we'll be going to Kurdistan and hearing about the first oil field opened in Iraq for decades by a Western company. But who is to control this precious resource, and could it yet lead to the breakup of Iraq? Welcome back to Jordan, where we're looking at the repercussions of the Iraq war with special reports from the country and a panel of guests here in Amman's Roman amphitheatre. Iraq, of course, has huge oil deposits, with top estimates of 300 billion barrels. Half of the oil fields are in the sheer south, most of the rest are in the north around Kirkuk. Channel 4 News has had exclusive access to the first oil field in decades to be opened by a foreign company in the area controlled by the Kurdish regional government near Erbil. The oil pipeline to Turkey, which has been repeatedly sabotaged, runs from Kirkuk to Turkey on the border, from where our economics correspondent Faisal Islam reports on the role that the black stuff will play in Iraq's future and the resulting tensions between the central and regional governments.
For 100 years, the countries and companies that have shaped the fate of Iraq have been after this prize, crude oil. It's pretty sticky stuff, and here it is coming straight out of the ground, but we think that there's another 300 billion barrels under the ground, much needed reserves, the second largest in the world. The question facing this country, is this stuff going to be the making of Iraq or the breaking of it?
Because it's not just oil companies competing against each other. The very question of who has the right to sell Iraq's oil is in dispute.
We have acted legally, constitutionally, 100%, and we have not violated anything in the Constitution. And we challenge anyone to come up with any constitutional argument that we've done anything wrong.
They are really trespassing on Iraq property, and that is going to create damage beyond repair if they don't stop at this.
Meet the General. This geologist, expert driller and occasional diplomat doesn't work for the likes of Exxon, BP or Shell. Instead, Magna Norman is the leader of a pack of maverick, mainly foreign oil companies who have stolen a march on their bigger rivals. Ours, the first cameras into his heavily guarded operation.
What we're seeing here is a drill pipe being pulled out from underneath the ground, 3 kilometres underground. This company's doing the first new exploration in Iraq in decades.
Norwegian company DNO have rented this drilling rig from China, complete with a troupe of Chinese drillers. They struck oil at the first attempt, finding 250 million barrels. The Kurdish regional government has now given them the first deal in the whole of post-Saddam Iraq to pump new crude oil.
The entry gate to Iraq today is definitely Kurdistan. We were the first international oil company that had the guts, I should say, to move into northern Iraq. And we didn't just talk about it, we did it.
But this spectacular discovery isn't being applauded by all. Oil is so bountiful across Iraq that some question the need for new exploration. Indeed, the central government in Baghdad has blacklisted some of the oil companies that have signed deals with the Kurdish regional government.
Unfortunately, Kurdistan regional government has been thinking more as Kurds than Iraqis, and that is really the crux of the whole problem. Kurdistan government has illegally been enacting contracts because they have no legal power to enact contracts. The oil and gas asset is the property of the whole nation.
Kurdish leaders are adamant that they have full constitutional authority to sign these deals, and that the moves here were necessary because of Baghdad's failure to reach agreement on a new oil law.
We expect within 5 years or 45 years to reach 1 million barrels a day of new oil for Iraq. This is for Iraq, this is not just for Kurdistan. So really we should be thanked for what we're doing for Iraq. We actually contribute in 50% more oil that Iraq never had. And I just wish my colleagues in Baghdad would do the same. They will be all a happy nation.
The physical expression of this tension is found in this tale of two pipelines. Iraq's second biggest export artery passes just 25 miles away from DNO's new field, and the Norwegian company has completed its own pipeline to transfer the oil, but the final few metres of pipe remain unconnected. There's 500,000 barrels of crude oil flowing through this, the metering station for the main pipeline from Iraq through to the north in Turkey. That translates to about £7 billion over the course of a year. But there's a catch. No Kurdish regional government oil is allowed to come through here.